I have kept records for the conquered for 41 cycles, births of treaties, deaths of nations, the small print at the bottom of agreements that nobody reads until it is too late. I am not a brave creature. My people, the Halu, are not built for bravery. We are built for memory. We sit in the back of the great rooms and we write down what the important ones say, so that later, when they lie about it, there is something that does not. I am telling you this so you understand. I was not a soldier. I was not anyone. But I was in the room that day. And I am the one who has to live with what I saw. You have to picture the place first, or none of it will mean anything. The conquered hall does not sit on a planet. Planets have weather, and weather has moods, and the old founders did not trust moods. So they built the hall in the dead space between 3 stars, on a ring station so wide that you cannot see the curve of it with one set of eyes. From the outside it looks like a coin that someone left spinning in the dark and forgot to ever catch. Inside it is quiet in a way that costs money. Every wall drinks sound. The floors are a black stone that was grown, not cut, and when you walk on it your footsteps go nowhere. You could scream in that room and the room would simply swallow it and keep its face calm. The seats rise in rings, hundreds of them. Every species that signed the founding charter has a place, and the places are arranged by age, the oldest near the floor, the youngest near the ceiling. The humans sat very near the ceiling. They had only been in the conquered for 30 cycles. In the eyes of the old ones, that made them children. Loud children. Children who had arrived with their hands already scarred, asking too many questions, refusing to be charmed. I like them if I am honest. The Halu are not supposed to like anyone. We are supposed to record. But there was something about the way the humans listened. Most delegations listen the way a predator listens, waiting for the gap, the weakness, the moment to speak over you. The humans listened like they were trying to actually understand the thing you were too afraid to say out loud. That morning, the hall was fuller than I had seen it in years. I knew why. We all knew why. The Threks were being let back in. Let me tell you about the Threks, and I will try to do it without my hands shaking, though I cannot promise. They are an old people, older than the conquered. They look to most of us beautiful, long and pale and slow-moving, with a stillness that the poets among us once mistook for wisdom. They speak softly. They never raise their voices. In all my cycles I have never once heard a Threk shout. They do not need to shout. They have other ways. 11 cycles before that morning, the Threk's dominion had wanted a stretch of empty space along the Caro Drift. Empty, except it was not empty. There was a human colony there. A small one. New. The kind of place that does not make the news because nothing important is supposed to happen there. The colony was called Anselm's Rest. 40,000 people. Farmers mostly, and the people who keep farmers alive, teachers, medics, a single overworked magistrate, a pilot or two. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone's children. The Threks asked them to leave. The humans said they had only just arrived. They asked for time. The Threks, in their soft voices, gave them 60 days. On the 50th day, the Threk's fleet arrived early. I have read the records. I am the one who filed them. There is a transcript of the final transmission from Anselm's Rest, and I am not going to repeat it to you because some things should not be said twice. I will only tell you that it ended in the middle of a word, not the end of a sentence, the middle of a word. 40,000. And the Threks did not even claim the land afterward. That is the part that the records cannot explain, and I have stopped trying to. They glassed it, they let it cool, and they never came back for it. As if the point had never been the land. As if the point had only been to show what they were willing to do, so that the next time they asked someone to leave, that someone would already be packing. The conquered investigated the way the conquered investigates. There were sessions. There were findings. The word atrocity was used, which is a strong word for that room. And then the Threks withdrew from the conquered. They were not expelled. Mind you, they left with great dignity, as if we had offended them. and for 11 cycles the matter sat in my archive growing quiet. And now the soft, pale, slow people were coming back. Because the Threx controlled the Veil Gate. I should explain the gate, since you are not from here. There are not many ways across this part of the galaxy. The deep currents are narrow and most of them lead nowhere. But there is one, the Veil Gate, an old alien thing, builders long dead, that connects the inner conquered worlds to the entire outer rim. Half of all trade goes through it. Half of all medicine. Half of all food that the inner worlds cannot grow for themselves. And 11 cycles ago, while we were busy being horrified, the Threx had quietly moved their fleet to sit on top of the Veil Gate. Not blocking it, just sitting. Slow, patient, beautiful. For 11 cycles, they had let everything pass and charged nothing, and made no demands. Then 6 months before that morning, they had begun, very gently, to close it. A ship turned back here. A convoy delayed there. Nothing you could call an act of war. Just a soft, pale hand resting on the throat of the galaxy, not squeezing, only reminding us that it was there. And then they sent word. They wished to rejoin the conquered. Full standing, full vote. And this is the part they wished for, what the message called a settlement of past grievances. A formal closing of the Anselm's Rest matter. No tribunal. No findings. A line drawn under it, signatures on both sides, and in exchange, the Veil Gate would open freely again, forever, guaranteed. A deal. The Threx would get their seat back and their good name washed clean, and in return the galaxy would get to breathe. And almost everyone in that room had already decided to take it. I felt it the moment I came in to set up my station. The mood. You learn to read a room when reading rooms is your only job. There was a kind of relief in the air, the ugly relief of people who have decided to do a shameful thing and have already finished the part of themselves that would have stopped them. The Cassan delegation, who control most of the inner shipping lanes, were practically glowing. Their lead, an old broad-shelled creature named Delegate Vor, kept touching the others on the shoulder, the way you do when you want everyone to stay calm, stay reasonable, stay with the plan. The meal were there in force, small, nervous, three-eyed people whose entire civilization depended on imported food. For them, this was not politics. This was whether their grandchildren ate. I could not even be angry at the meal. If my own people were starving, I do not know what I would have signed. The old ones near the floor sat with the stillness of those who have decided that survival is the only morality that scales. The Dren, the Asuku, the Pale Synod. 11 cycles is a long time to be afraid, and they were so very tired of being afraid. And then the Threx came in. I want you to understand what it is like when the Threx enter a room. The lights do not dim. No music plays. They do not announce themselves. They simply arrive, and the air seems to get thinner, and everyone's conversations die one table at a time like candles in a draft, until the whole great hall is silent, and you can hear the soft Threx footsteps that the swallowing floor is supposed to eat but somehow does not. At the head of them walked their suzerain. His name, and I write it as I filed it, with all the honors the protocol office insisted on, was Suzerain Kael Vathun of the 9th Pale Line, keeper of the long patience, he who was promised the slow hour. I will call him the Suzerain, because the rest of it makes me sick. He was tall even for a Threx, pale to the point of seeming lit from inside. He moved the way deep water moves, like there was no rush, like rushing was a thing that lesser creatures did. He had a face that was almost gentle, almost kind. I think that is the thing I have never been able to forgive, that the creature who ended Anselm's Rest in the middle of a word had a face you could imagine bending over a sick child. He took the floor, not a seat. The Threx had been granted, by special motion, the right to address before they were seated, which the protocol office told me was a great and generous courtesy. And the humans were not there. That is the thing I remember most from that first hour. 300 delegations, every seat full, the most important session in 11 cycles. and the human chairs near the ceiling sat empty. The whispers started. The humans had boycotted. The humans had given up. The humans, who had lost 40,000 of their own, could not bear to be in the room, and so they had stayed away. And honestly, who could blame them, and wasn't it almost better? Because now the unpleasant business could be done without anyone having to look at the grieving party. I heard Delegate Vor say it to a colleague, quietly, the way you say a thing you are ashamed of. It's kinder this way, they don't have to watch. I wrote it down. I write down everything. It is the one thing I am good at. The suzerain began to speak. I will not give you all of it. He spoke for a long time, and the longer he spoke the more I understood that the Threks had not come to ask for forgiveness. They had come to grant it, to themselves, with our help. He spoke of the deep currents of time, of how all peoples do terrible things in their youth, and the wise thing, the mature thing, is to let the past be the past. He spoke of the Veil Gate as if it were a gift his people were offering rather than a knife they were holding. He spoke of Anselm's rest exactly once, and the word he used was not colony and it was not people. The word he used was incident. The incident at the Caro Drift. As if 40,000 farmers had been a clerical error. And I watched the room nodded. Not everyone, but enough. Enough heads dipped, enough shells shifted, enough of the old ones let their eyes go soft with the relief of a hard thing being made easy. The meal wept openly, three-eyed and ashamed and so very hungry. The Cassin looked at their hands. He was nearly finished. He had begun the closing words, the ones that flow into the part where the chair calls for the motion and the motion passes, and the thing is done and can never be undone. And the great doors at the far end of the hall opened. I want to describe this exactly, because I have heard it described wrong 100 times since, by people who were not there. There was no music, no fanfare. The doors did not slam. They simply opened the way doors open, and through them came 4 humans. Only 4. That was the first strange thing. A delegation to the most important session in 11 cycles, and they sent 4. The Cassin had brought 30. The Threks had brought 100. The humans sent 4, and 3 of them were so young I would have called them children if I did not know better, and they were carrying things. Boxes, plain gray boxes, the kind that medical supplies come in, stacked 2 and 3 high in their arms. And at the front walked a woman. I had met her before, once. Her name was Ambassador Iris Calloway, and she was not what the Conquered expected from humans. The humans the Conquered knew were loud and quick and warm. Calloway was none of those things. She was small and gray-haired and walked with a slight limp she never explained, and when she spoke so quietly that the swallowing floor genuinely did eat half her words, so that you had to lean in, the whole room had to lean in to catch her. I think she did it on purpose. I think she had learned a long time ago that the quietest voice in a room is the one everyone strains to hear. She did not look at the suzerain. She did not look at the chair. She walked with her limp all the way down the long aisle through the absolute center of that silent hall, with 3 young humans and their gray boxes behind her, and she walked past the human seats near the ceiling, and she kept going down and down toward the floor. The chair found his voice. Ambassador Calloway, the human delegation's place is. I know where our place is, she said, quiet, not unkind. We've been put as high up as you could put us, the newcomers, the children. She reached the floor. She set down nothing. She just stood there, a small gray woman at the very center of the oldest room in the galaxy, a few steps from the suzerain of the Threks. I thought today, of all days, we might come down where you can all see us. Nobody stopped her. I think nobody knew how. The suzerain regarded her. He did not seem angry. The Threks are never angry. He inclined his beautiful pale head, the very picture of patience, of a great soul tolerating an interruption. Ambassador, he said in that soft voice, we had understood your people would not attend. We took it as a kindness. We would not have wished to cause you distress. And here is a thing I have thought about for many cycles since. He gave her a way out, right there. He offered her grief as an excuse to be silent. He was telling her in front of everyone, "You are the wounded party. No one expects you to be reasonable. Go up to your high seat and weep and let the adults finish." It was the cruelest kindness I have ever heard. Calloway looked at him for a long moment. "Distress," she repeated. "This need not be difficult for you," the suzerain said. "What is being done here is a healing, a closing. We grieve the incident at—" "Don't," her voice did not rise, it got quieter, the whole room leaned. "Don't say that you grieve it, not in front of me, you can lie to them." She did not even gesture at the rings of delegates, she did not need to. "You've been lying to them for an hour and they wanted to be lied to, so it was easy. But you will not stand there and grieve Anselm's rest to my face. You don't have the right, you used it up." The chair half rose. "Ambassador, this is a formal address, and the suzerain has the floor." "Then I'll wait," Calloway said. And she did. She stood there, small and gray, and she folded her hands, and she waited, and the silence stretched, and the longer it stretched the worse it got, because every second she stood there waiting was a second the whole Concord had to spend in the same room as what they were about to do. I have to tell you about the boxes now, because by then everyone in the room was looking at them. The three young humans had set them down, quietly, in a row along the floor of the hall, right at the center where the light was best. There were a great many of them, more than I first thought. They kept opening more of those great doors and bringing in more. And they began, the three young ones, to open them. Inside the boxes were not weapons, not data slates, not the legal instruments you bring to a treaty. Inside the boxes were small things. A child's shoe, a pair of spectacles, one lens cracked, a cooking pot blackened, a musical instrument I did not know with 3 strings, 2 of them broken, a wooden toy, a bundle of letters tied with cord, a medical apron with a name stitched on it, a teacher's marking pen, a shoe again, they had so many shoes, the small kind, a wedding band. A drawing, done by a child, of 2 stick figures and a sun. The kind of thing every species children draw because every species children love whoever feeds them and the sun that warms them. They had brought Anselm's rest into the room. Not all of it. You cannot bring 40,000 people into a room. But the humans had gone after the glassing to the places the colonists had kept their things, the orbital depot, the supply tenders, the few homes whose contents had been catalogued for insurance, for inheritance, for the small administrative mercies that follow a death. And they had kept it, for 11 cycles. They had kept every shoe and pot and letter, and they had brought it here, and they were laying it out, piece by piece, in silence, on the floor of the conquered hall, in front of the creature who had made it into wreckage. Nobody spoke. The chair did not speak. The Cassin did not speak. The meal had stopped weeping and were simply staring with all 3 eyes. And the suzerain, I watched him very carefully, because it was my job to watch. The suzerain's beautiful, patient face did not change at all. That was when I understood that we were not dealing with a soldier who had done a terrible thing in a terrible war. We were dealing with something that had laid out 40,000 farmers like a placed bet and felt nothing, and had come here to be thanked for closing the books. The chair finally found his nerve. "Ambassador, with respect, this is a display. We are conducting the business of the conquered. The suzerain has come in good faith to—" "Good faith." Calloway picked up the child's drawing, the 2 stick figures and the sun. She held it up so the rings could see it, turning slowly the way you'd show a thing to children. Her name was Tella, she was 6. Her teacher kept her best drawings to show her parents at the season's end. The teacher is dead too, so I suppose this is the showing. She set it down again, gently, exactly where it had been. "We can talk about good faith. Let's. The suzerain gave my people 60 days. Does everyone here know that? 60 days to abandon a colony that took 9 years to build. We didn't refuse. We asked for time, we begged. There are transmissions, the clerk has them. And here is the thing," she looked up, right at the back of the room, right at me, the little hallow nobody, and she said, "Don't you, clerk, you have them." The whole room turned to look at me. 41 cycles in the back of that hall, and no one had ever once turned to look at me. My voice did not work the first time. The second time it did. Yes, I have them, they are filed. Then it's true, she said, turning back to the floor. It's recorded. It's not the grieving widow making things up. The colony asked for time and the suzerain gave them time, and then his fleet arrived on the 58th day, 2 days early. Now, quiet, so quiet, the whole galaxy leaning in. I have been a soldier and I have been a diplomat and I have signed things I am ashamed of, so I am not here to pretend my people's hands are clean of everything in all of history. But I want one of you, any of you, the wise old ones down here at the front, the ones who have decided this is maturity. I want one of you to explain to me the 2 days. Silence. 60 days was the threat, she said. 58 was the message. He could have done it on day 60 and called it policy. He did it on day 58 so that everyone watching would understand that the number was never real, that nothing he says is real, that a promise from this person, and now, finally, she looked at the suzerain, full on, is a thing he breaks 2 days early just so you'll know he was always going to. The suzerain smiled. I had never seen a Threx smile before. I hope I never do again. You speak movingly, he said. Grief makes poets of us all, but the conquered cannot run on the keepsakes of the dead, ambassador. It runs on the needs of the living. The Veil Gate feeds 11 worlds in this room. The meal, the lower Dren, the Asuku Rim. He let it land. He was good. He had been doing this for centuries. Will you tell them that their children should starve so that your shoes can stay in their boxes? Is that the morality humans have brought to us? Sentiment over survival. It was a good blow. I saw it land. I saw the meal flinch. I saw the relief flicker back into the room. Yes, it's sentiment, it's grief. It's understandable, but it's not practical. And Calloway nodded slowly, as if he had a point, as if she were considering it. You're right, she said. That's a real choice. Their children or are dead. And I'm not going to stand here and tell the meal their hunger doesn't matter, because it does. It matters more than my feelings, more than these boxes, more than I can say. She turned to the meal delegation directly. 3 small, nervous people who had wept and were now barely breathing. I'm sorry, she told them, and she meant it. Even I could hear that she meant it. I am so sorry that you've been put in this room and made to choose. That was done to you on purpose. He put his fleet on your throat so that you would carry his guilt for him, so that when you voted to wash his name, you'd think it was your mercy and not his blade. That's the cruelty of it. He's made you his accomplice and called it your survival. The lead meal made a small broken sound. So no, Calloway said, turning back to the center. I won't ask you to starve. I'd never ask that. She paused, and the room thought it was over. The room thought she was about to yield. I'll open the gate myself. I will end part 1 here, on the line that broke the room, because what she said next, and what the suzerain said back, and what happened when the vote was finally called, is the whole heart of it, and it deserves the room it needs. Tell me to continue by, and part 2 picks up exactly on that sentence. The climax, her revelation about the gate and the human fleet, the suzerain's last move, the silence, the vote, and the closing line. Bolo to main part 1 ko by 8k 9k tak expand kar sakta hun agar op chahin, you said. Part 2. I'll open the gate myself. The room did not understand it at first. I did not understand it at first. It sounded like grief talking, like a small gray woman making a promise too big for her, the way the bereaved say, I'll fix it over a thing that cannot be fixed. The suzerain understood it before the rest of us did. I know because his smile went away. That was the first crack. 41 cycles of watching faces, and I had never once seen a Threx lose a smile they had chosen to wear. They put a smile on the way you set a stone in place, and it stays. This one came off, just for a moment, just long enough for me to write it down. You cannot open the gate, the suzerain said, still soft. But there was a new care in the softness now, the care of someone walking on ice he had thought was ground. My fleet holds the Veil Gate. Ambassador, your people have no presence in that region. You withdrew 11 cycles ago. We watched you withdraw. You watched us leave, Calloway said. Those aren't the same thing. Let me tell you what nobody in that room knew, and what I had to learn the same as everyone else, sitting at my little station with my hands gone cold. When Anselm's Rest died, the humans did not rage. That was the thing the Conquered had never been able to explain and had quietly decided meant the humans were weak. There was no fleet sent in fury, no reprisal, no grand speech. The human delegation came to one session, 11 cycles ago, and they listened to the findings, and the word atrocity was used, and then they got up and they left the Conquered floor, and most of us assumed they had gone home to mourn. They had gone home to build. For 11 cycles, while the Threk sat patient on the Veil Gate, while the Conquered grew used to being afraid, while the matter went quiet in my archive, the humans had been doing the slow, unglamorous, invisible work that no one watches because it is boring. They had been mapping the deep currents around the Veil Gate, not the gate itself, the water around it, the narrow places, the dead ends that everyone said led nowhere. There's an old principle my people have, Calloway said, and she said it almost gently, almost like a teacher, because 3 of her delegation were young and maybe she was still teaching them even then. You don't take the door someone's guarding. You spend 10 years learning the house, every wall, every drain, every crack in the foundation that the owner stopped seeing because he's lived there too long. She looked at the suzerain. You've sat on that gate for 11 years. You stopped seeing the house. We never stopped looking. There is no other route, the suzerain said, and for the first time his voice was not soft, it was flat. The Veil Gate is the only crossing. This is known. This is mapped. This is the oldest fact in the... It was the only crossing that didn't kill you, Calloway said. There's a difference. She nodded to one of the young ones. The tallest of the 3, a boy who could not have been more than 20 in human years, with his jaw set so hard I thought it might break. He brought up a projection, not a grand one. Humans never did the grand projections the Cassin loved. It was small and plain, and it hung in the air over the boxes of dead children's shoes, and it showed the region around the Veil Gate, and it showed the Threk's fleet sitting on the gate like a hand on a throat. And then it showed the currents, the real ones, the ones the humans had spent 11 cycles charting in the dark. There was a route. It did not go through the gate. It went around it, through a chain of narrow dead water passages that every chart in the Conquered marked as impassable, that the builders themselves had probably marked as impassable, that wound through a stretch of folded space so tight and so violent that nothing was supposed to survive it. We lost 41 ships learning that path, Calloway said, quiet again. Crews who volunteered knowing the odds, they have names too. I could have brought their boxes. I decided one room full of dead was enough for one day. She let that sit. But we know it now every turn. We've run cargo through it for 2 years, slowly, quietly. Not enough to matter, just enough to be sure. The Veil Gate isn't the only crossing anymore, suzerain. It's just the one you're sitting on. The room made a sound I had never heard it make. A kind of collective intake, 300 delegations breathing in at once, and the swallowing floor could not eat all of it. So, for one moment, the oldest room in the galaxy actually gasped. Then you've been smuggling, the suzerain said, and he reached for the only ground left to him, the lawyer's ground, the ground of procedure. Unauthorized transit through contested space. The Conquered forbids. I know what the Conquered forbids, Calloway said. I read the charter, all of it. I read the part you keep skipping. She turned slowly to the rings of delegates, the old ones near the floor. The ones who had decided survival was the only morality that scaled. There's a clause, Founding Charter, Article 11, the one nobody invokes because nobody's ever needed to. It says any member may, for the relief of a famine or a siege, open and operate a transit corridor through conquered space, and no member may bar it, and the corridor stands for as long as the need stands. She smiled, and it was not a kind smile, and it was not unkind either. It was just very, very tired. The meal are starving, the lower Dren are starving, the Osiku Rim is rationing medicine. That's a famine, that's a siege. The charter's clear, we don't need anyone's permission, we don't need the gate, and we don't need him. She did not say his name. She said him, and the word landed harder than the name would have. The corridor's already open, she said. It opened this morning. 300 human relief tenders entered conquered space at dawn, while the suzerain was telling you he held the only key in the galaxy. They're carrying meal grain and dren protein and Asuku medicine, and they did not pass through the Veil Gate. And there is nothing the Threx fleet can do to stop them without firing on famine relief in front of the entire Concord. I watched the meal delegation. I will never forget it. The three of them, the small, nervous, three-eyed people who had wept, who had been made into the murderer's accomplice and told it was their mercy, one of them rose, slowly, on legs that did not want to hold. "Is this true?" the lead meal said. Not to Calloway, to the chair, to the Conquered, to anyone. "Is grain coming? Is it real grain, now, today?" And the chair, who had a manifest on his station the same as I had on mine, the chair who had received the same dawn alert all of us had received and had not understood until this moment what it meant. The chair looked down at his readout, and his old voice cracked, and he said, "Yes, it's yes. There are 300 tenders. They're real. They're already past the inner markers." The meal sat down, and then the meal wept again, but it was a different weeping, and you did not need 3 eyes to tell the difference. The suzerain had nothing. He stood at the center of the oldest room in the galaxy, surrounded by the boxed belongings of the people he had killed, and he had nothing, and everyone could see that he had nothing, and the Threx had built their whole patient civilization on never once letting anyone see them with nothing. He tried one more thing. I have to record it because it was the truest thing he said all day, and I think he did not mean it to be. "You think you have won a victory for mercy," he said, and the softness was gone entirely now, and what was underneath it was the thing I had been afraid of from the first moment. "You have won a victory for chaos. Order is held by those willing to do what must be done. We held this region for 1,000 years. We kept the peace. The peace you enjoy, the peace your dead farmers enjoyed for 9 years, was kept by people like me being willing to do the things that you weep over. 40,000. Yes. 40,000 so that 400 million could sleep without fear of war. That is the arithmetic of order, and you are too soft to do it, and so you will dress your softness up as virtue and call it a great day. And in 100 years, when the chaos comes, you will not understand why." And the room was silent. Because, and this is the thing I am ashamed to tell you because a part of the room agreed with him, I felt it. The old, tired part. The part that had been afraid for 11 cycles. The part that wanted, very badly, for someone strong and terrible to take the hard choices away so the rest of us could keep our hands clean and our consciences soft. He was speaking to that part. He had always been speaking to that part. It was the only part of us he had ever needed. Calloway let the silence run. She was not afraid of silence. I think that was her real weapon, the whole time. She could stand inside a silence longer than anyone, because she had stood inside the worst silence there is, the one that comes in the middle of a word, when a transmission ends and 40,000 voices stop at once. And after that, no quiet in any council room could frighten her. "You keep saying had to," she said finally. "Had to must be done, the arithmetic of order." She walked to one of the boxes. She crouched with her limp slow, and she lifted out the small thing on top. It was the shoe, the child's shoe. She held it in both hands, not high this time, not for show. Just held it the way you hold a thing. 2 days, she said. "You did it on day 58. You had 2 more days. The arithmetic didn't need the 2 days. The peace didn't need the 2 days. There was no order in the world that required you to arrive early." She looked up at him. "You did it early because you wanted to, because it pleased you to be feared." The whole grand speech about order, about the hard choices, the 1,000 years, and it all comes apart on 2 days you can't explain. Because the truth is, you're not a guardian who does terrible things so the rest of us can sleep. You're someone who likes it, and built a philosophy on top so you'd never have to say so. She set the shoe back, exactly where it had been. "Humans don't make deals with murderers," she said, and she did not say it like a slogan. She said it like a fact, the plain kind, the kind you write in a ledger. Not because we're better than you. We've got our own boxes back home, our own things we did, our own days we arrived early. We don't make the deal because of what the deal is. A treaty with you isn't peace. It's an agreement to call the next 40,000 an incident before they're even born. We're not signing the thing that makes the next one easier. That's all. That's the whole speech. The chair called the motion. It was supposed to be a formality. An hour earlier it had been a formality. The Threx readmitted full standing, the Anselm's rest matter closed, signatures on both sides, the gate opened forever. The chair called it and his voice shook, and he asked for the ayes. I sat with my hands on my station, ready to record the count, the way I had recorded 10,000 counts before. Silence. The Cassin did not raise. Delegate Vore, who had touched everyone on the shoulder and said it's kinder this way, sat with his old broad shell very still and did not raise. The meal did not raise. The lower Dren did not raise. The Osiku did not raise. The Pale Synod, the oldest of all, who had survived 1,000 years by always choosing the strong side, the Pale Synod did not raise. Not one. In 41 cycles I had never recorded a motion that died with 0 ayes. The form does not even have a clean way to file it. I had to write it in the margin. Motion failed. Ayes, none. Against, silence. Because that is what it was. Nobody voted against either. Nobody made a speech. The conquered did not roar or rally or find its courage in some grand moment. It just sat there, 300 delegations in the oldest room in the galaxy, and refused to raise its hands, and the refusing was so total and so quiet that it was worse than any shout. The murderer asked the galaxy to make a deal, and the galaxy did not even dignify it with a no. The galaxy simply declined to move. The council fell silent. People say that phrase like it's poetry. It wasn't poetry. It was 300 people's discovering all at the same moment that they had a floor under them that they had forgotten they had, and finding they could not make themselves go below it, even to be safe. Especially to be safe. The suzerain stood in that silence for a long time, longer than was dignified. He was waiting, I think, for the old fear to do its work, for one shell to shift, one hand to rise, one delegation to remember it was hungry and afraid. He had 1,000 years of evidence that it would. It always had. No hand rose. And then he did the only thing left to a creature like that. He gathered the soft, slow stillness back around himself, the borrowed dignity, the great soul among children posture, and he turned, and he walked out the way he had come, his 100 behind him, their pale footsteps that the floor was supposed to eat but somehow did not. He did not look at the boxes. Not once. Right to the end he would not look at the boxes. The doors closed behind the Threx. They never came back. Not the next cycle, not the cycle after. The Veil Gate fleet sat on its throne of dead water for another 2 years, charging nothing, demanding nothing, beautiful and patient and pointless, because the galaxy had stopped needing the door it was guarding. And then one day the fleet was simply gone, withdrawn in the night without announcement, the way the Threx do everything, and the gate opened on its own, and trade flowed through it again. And through the human corridor too, and nobody made a deal about any of it. It just opened, because there was no longer anyone willing to keep it shut. I want to tell you the last thing, the small thing, because I am a clerk and the small things are what I am for. After the doors closed, the hall did not erupt. There was no cheering. I think everyone was too ashamed of how close they had come, and too stunned by what they had found in themselves at the last moment to cheer. The delegations filed out quietly, most of them not meeting each other's eyes. The humans stayed, the 4 of them. They packed the boxes back up slowly by hand, the child's shoe and the cracked spectacles and the toy and the letters and the drawing of 2 stick figures and a sun. They did not leave a single thing behind. They had brought the dead into that room to be seen, and now that the seeing was done, they took them home again, gently, the way you carry someone who is sleeping. Ambassador Calloway was the last to leave. She came up the long aisle with her limp, and she stopped at my little station in the back, the place no one ever stops. "You filed the transmissions," she said. 11 years. You kept them when keeping them wasn't worth anything to anyone." "It's my function," I said. It was all I knew how to say. She looked at me for a moment with those quiet human eyes. "No," she said. "Anyone can have a function. You kept them because you thought someday someone would need the truth more than they needed the lie. That's not a function. That's a hope." She put a small gray hand flat on my station just for a second. "Thank you for keeping it for us." And then she went with her boxes and her young ones out through the great doors, and I sat alone in the oldest room in the galaxy, where the floor eats every sound. And I found that I was making one anyway, a small halloo sound, the kind we are not built for, and the floor could not eat it, and I let it. I have kept records for the conquered for 41 cycles. I have filed births of treaties and deaths of nations, and the small print at the bottom that nobody reads until it is too late. People ask me when they learn I was there what the lesson was. They want it clean. They want the moral, the line you can put under a thing to close it, the way the suzerain wanted to put a line under 40,000 farmers. I always tell them the same thing, and they are always disappointed because it is not grand. The lesson is that there was a floor. We had all forgotten it was there. The strong creatures told us for 1,000 years that there was no floor, that there was only the cold arithmetic and the hard choices and the willingness to do what must be done. And most of us believed them, because believing them let us keep our hands clean while someone else did the killing. And then a small gray woman with a limp carried a box of dead children's shoes into the oldest room in the galaxy and set them down on the floor and waited. And one by one, 300 peoples discovered that the floor had been under us the whole time. Humans don't make deals with murderers. Not because they are better than the rest of us. Because they were the ones, that day, who remembered we could refuse.